This week on The Record, disaster strikes St. Louis. A deadly tornado kills 5 and demolishes thousands of homes.
Whole entire sides, fronts, backs, tops of homes are missing.
It is hard to capture in words. It is even harder to capture in some ways in images.
City, state, and federal governments spring into action. Desperate victims fear frustrating delays could mount into costly consequences.
I want to be big. I want to be in my house until God get ready to take me home.
Congressman Wesley Bell is on the record. Congress pulls an all-nighter. House Republicans sign off on stiff work requirements to qualify for Medicaid. Missouri Republicans reverse course, sending questions over abortion back to voters and gutting paid leave protections voters already approved. How will those maneuvers impact Missouri politics? And recovery in North St. Louis. Veteran Alderwoman Sharon Tyus is on the record. It's all coming up right now. Welcome to The Record. I'm Mark Maxwell. We come on the air from inside the comfort of a TV studio at a time when many of our neighbors still have no way to see this broadcast. St. Louis is reeling in the aftermath of a devastating mile-wide tornado that killed 5 people and twisted and tore through entire neighborhoods in some of the oldest, most historic parts of town. The EF3 tornado crushed homes to rubble. 78-year-old Larry Patrick, 60-year-old Renee Lyles, 48-year-old Juan Baltazar, 70-year-old Dolores Holmes, and 74-year-old Patricia Pendleton were all killed in that storm. The loved ones of 68-year-old Jerome Robinson tell us he also died of a heart attack when the tornado hit his house. The damage is catastrophic. No combination of pictures, videos, or words can adequately capture the cruel sense of sudden loss. Survivors recounted their close scrapes with death.
Had I made it to the basement, I probably would have been dead. You see, all this stuff on top. I ain't no way I could have got out.
What do you see when you walk up your sidewalk here?
Sadness. I cried all day Friday.
You had all these picture frames, all these mementos, family memories, and something so special and precious.
Right.
What do you do with that?
Pray. I'm all out of tears.
It's kind of hard because it's not a common thing to happen in the St. Louis City environment.
Alderwoman Sharon Tyus represents one of the hardest hit wards in North City, and she joins us now. Alderwoman, good to have you with us. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
We're glad to have you here in studio. Can you tell us quickly just what have you seen in the damage, but in the recovery effort in your ward this week?
So I've been on record as saying the damage is so hard to look at. It's a catastrophe. And what's so hard is that the storm skipped over. So I live in the 4900 block right off of Kings Highway. The blocks along Kings Highway kind of made it through. It was a few damaged houses, but none. You can go down a block and a half in the 47 and 4800 blocks through the 4400 blocks. And my streets are very straight and just catastrophe. Total blocks, nothing left. All the houses the tops have come off, the roof that comes off. And people don't want to leave their houses, so they're camping outside their houses. But the great part is that the overpouring of help that has come from the people within the community. The first day when it happened, we had people that were out there directing traffic. We had people that got their saws.
In the absence of stoplights and stop signs.
That is it. We had no electricity. In fact, a part of my community still does not have electricity.
I can't tell you how many hours, I say respectfully, I must have heard you on the floor in City Hall debating and advocating for just how long people in your part of town have waited for a rebuild. Can you guarantee that this catastrophe will lead to the kind of collective call to action it would take to bring results and finally rebuild North St. Louis?
So I cannot guarantee any such thing. I will tell you I will continue to advocate, and I've been doing that since I've been there. And there's been some good things. We built the first grocery store, the first school, we didn't get a hardware store, we got a Walgreens. It's things that we've had, but that was in one ward. I represented was the 20th ward, but there were so many other wards that didn't get that. Now we're down to 14 wards, which make it much larger, and it's harder. Everybody thinks going to 14 was good. That was not a good idea. But I do believe that the mayor that we have now is committed to making sure that we get a fair share. But I want to say it didn't just hit North St. Louis. If you go down Union and Del Mar, which is adjacent to my community, and I actually represent part of Del Mar now, it hit Del Mar hard in Union. So I want to see everything rebuilt. I do want North St. Louis to be rebuilt, but I want it to be acknowledge that everybody took a hit.
It certainly did. There's also FEMA itself, the federal government, when they look at where to steer federal aid, if and when they do unlock that individual assistance, they look and see where do people have insurance, where are they uninsured or underinsured. And a lot of those properties that you mentioned in Del Mar, Clayton, a lot of them have, south of Del Mar, a lot of them have insurance. And you start to see that change and the socioeconomic patterns start to shift there. So I don't know what we'll see. I want to ask you, though, about, you have another interesting perspective, because you're not just an older woman, you're a landlord. Mm-hmm. You have interesting perspective there. A lot of these damaged buildings are unsafe in their current condition. The city is flagging them with notices, but also promising not to necessarily punish anyone who still walks inside. That's their home, maybe they have belongings in there. What should a renter do in that tense situation there if a landlord tells them, get out? What should the city do if landlords are telling people to get out?
So here's the thing. As a landlord, I also used to work for legal services, keeping people in their homes, okay? As a landlord, I have a responsibility to have a habitable, safe place. If it's not out of my control and it's God's control, and my house or my apartment gets hit, then I can't let tenants stay there, or else I'm going to be liable. I have insurance on all of my buildings, and I tell all of my tenants when they rent from me, here's the thing to get rental insurance. But I cannot let you stay in my building and then risk that you get hurt. So I think the city doesn't want to take the risk of telling people the truth. The hard truth sometimes is hard, because there are people out there that want to start up a lot of trouble, but you can't let them stay in those buildings.
The question is, if the landlord must evict someone for their own liability's sake, fearing they might lose their house if something bad is to happen in the aftermath, then where do those people go? Are you satisfied the city has enough shelter right now?
Well, the landlord doesn't evict. What they says is this is not safe. Then you can let them go in there to get something out. But you have a right to shut your building down and say, no, you're not supposed to be here because it's not safe. The city is not wanting to condemn, because that's been a bad word. But there are some buildings that are ultimately going to have to be condemned. And I think that we do not have enough places for people to shelter safely in the city. But I'm hoping that this is a regional thing, a metropolitan thing, and that people will help us out.
Are you hearing signs from any big shelters, places like hotels, Airbnb owners, people that are offering places up to take people in?
No, I have not heard any of that, because I've heard that people are full. Because remember, a lot of people don't have electricity right now. And so the people are going to the hotels and filling them up, the people that can afford to, and renting the places out. In the last 30 seconds we have here, I know you've told me before you've presided over parts of the city under 7 mayors. How is this mayor doing? She's doing a good job. She's only been in office for 30 days. She has been very communicative. She not only talks to me, but all the aldermen. She calls you or texts you almost daily. She listens to your suggestions. I think that some people are giving her an unfair hit, but she's doing a great job to me. Alderwoman Sharon Tice, thank you for coming in studio. Thank you. Good luck to you in your ward. Mm-hmm. We're back in a moment. Late Wednesday night, the House of Representatives passed President Trump's so-called One Big Beautiful Bill. It passed in a 215 to 214 vote, with one voting present. 2 Republicans joined all Democrats to vote against it. The legislation extends the president's expiring 2017 tax cuts. It contains increases in spending for the military and to fund President Trump's mass deportation plans. It also slashes billions of dollars that fund Medicaid and food benefits in the SNAP programs. One area Democrat rushed back from helping community members in tornado recovery to try and prevent the bill from passing. Congressman Wesley Bell is now on the record. Congressman, thanks for joining us. I know you guys just got done voting on a big spending bill. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, what have you seen and what do you know about the disaster on the ground and the recovery efforts right now?
Well, my thoughts and prayers are with victims and families impacted, as I've said many times before. And so what I can tell you is it's a collaborative effort on the local, state, and federal levels. And not just to mention our first responders, but our utility workers. Power is being restored to the overwhelming number of folks who had lost power. And so, you know, there's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts to what's going on to make certain that we get the resources to folks that they need.
We saw a letter from you to ask a number of questions to President Trump as to whether or not cuts to the National Weather Service or to NOAA might have impeded or degraded our ability to see this coming faster. I think our meteorologists saw the storm coming, but have you seen any evidence yet that we missed something along the way? Aside from the city just not pushing the siren button, we kind of knew this was coming.
Yeah, I do, but we have to understand that as we see the increase of these types of storms, this is something that we wouldn't have thought was going to happen to us, even last year. And so if we continue to decrease funding for these pivotal services, we could get to a point where we're not getting the notifications and alerts that folks need. And so we don't want to wait until the problem happens before we start addressing the issue. We want to get out in front of it. And that's what this is an attempt to do. Now, maybe there is something that impacted notifications in this with these particular storms. Maybe not. That's fine. But we do know that there has been potential cuts to NOAA and other resources that are important in these types of situations. And so we want to get out ahead of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of urgent need and people, a growing sense of frustration that help isn't arriving just fast enough. I do want to ask you quickly about the House Democrats. Every last member in the House Democratic Caucus voting against President Trump's one big, beautiful bill, he calls it. That's how he bills it. How would you describe it?
As one big, ugly bill. It's the biggest cut to Medicaid in the history of our country. It cuts financial assistance, or better known as SNAP, but it cuts food assistance for our most vulnerable kids, seniors who need it. And it's taking away, and this is an independent report by the CBO, it's taking away from the bottom 10% and redistributing money and resources and tax breaks to the top 10% billionaires, essentially. And we were sent here to work for working class families. We were sent here to protect our most vulnerable. And so, yes, I was and will be a hard no on this bill. And I would like to add, Mark, at any point, House Republicans can sit down with us and they'll find a willing partner to work on, they're in power. So they're going to get some of their agenda items over the finish line. But let's sit down and work together so that we can come up with an actual bill that's beautiful, that will benefit Americans. But what we're seeing in this bill is not that at all.
All right, Congressman Bell, I know there will be a lot of time in the near future to further dissect the impact of this legislation, but for now I know you're catching a plane back to St. Louis, a lot of work on the ground in the district here. We'll see you soon.
All right.
Our conversation with Congressman Bell continues on KSDK.com. Tune in on the 5 Plus app for free tomorrow night for an expanded version of this whole episode. We're back after this. Joining us now for insight and analysis into the top political developments of this week, our political analyst, Anita Mannion. Good to have you back with us.
Great to be here.
We're hearing from this, well, first of all, the House bill's going to the Senate. That's the first rule of how a bill becomes law, right?
That's right.
Senator Josh Hawley there has said he cannot support a bill with cuts to Medicaid. He's also signaling that the Senate will eventually write its own version of this House bill. What do you see in his messaging and his maneuvering here?
Well, he's not the only senator to express some concerns over Medicaid and other cuts and other aspects of the bill. But certainly I think we've seen Senator Hawley take several more populist turns in his policy and rhetoric over the last couple of years, possibly for a 2028 presidential run. But I think it will be interesting to see what the Senate does with this bill. It won't come out the same bill that the House put out.
The bond market was rattled by some of the deficit implications to this spending bill. The Congressional Budget Office said on the healthcare side, an estimated 7.5 million people could become uninsured. As it stands, I don't know that there would have to be some significant changes for Senator Hawley for it to earn his support if we are to believe his stated positions.
That's right. And so some people, deficit hawks, the more conservative folks, are mad because this could lead to $3 trillion in deficit spending, while others are worried that the cuts are too deep. And so the biggest cuts would come to Medicaid, also to student loans, to climate change initiatives, and to SNAP, which is what some people call food stamps.
There's been a big surge, too. This has gone, I think, often underreported, if I can say so. But this push to use public dollars to fund private, often religious schools. This week, the Supreme Court deadlocked on a major case involving school choice and religion in public education. Oklahoma's plan for a religious charter school, leaving a state court ban in place, but there's really not a national precedent until now. The Supreme Court, again, deadlocking 4-4, Amy Coney Barrett abstaining. What do you think this might mean for Missouri politics, for Illinois politics going forward?
So in Missouri, really the only areas that have charter schools are St. Louis City, Kansas City, and then some in Boone County. So there are restrictions on that, but certainly conservatives in Missouri have been interested in expanding charter schools and also vouchers. So far, courts have mainly found that vouchers can be used for religious schools, but that public schools, which charter schools or a public school, cannot teach religion. And so this Supreme Court, though, has been very favorable to freedom of religion. So I think it's likely that advocates will come back with a case that Amy Coney Barrett will not recuse herself from and try this again.
It could come back again in court.
Yeah.
Missouri legislators also advanced a new abortion ban into the form of a ballot question. It would have some exceptions for victims of rape or incest within that first 12 weeks.
That's right.
Some Democrats have said, well, hang on a minute. Some people don't even know they're pregnant in the first 12 weeks. So what are we in for over the next possibly 2 years, depending on whenever Governor Kehoe puts that question on the ballot? This fight now becomes one about shifting or reset in the messaging.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a messaging battle, a big part of it. This is not the first time we've seen our state legislature overturn what Democrats would say is the will of the voters. So on this issue, we saw about 52% of Missourians vote for Amendment 3. And Missouri is the fastest state to vote to overturn an abortion ban and then put it right back on the ballot. Because it was a constitutional amendment, though, it has to go back to the voters. And so voters will get an opportunity to vote on this, but there's now arguments over that framing of the ballot language.
We get this question from viewers sometimes. They say, well, wait a minute, we also voted for paid leave and a minimum wage hike. How come the state can just back that out and gut those protections? Well, they didn't write them into the Constitution.
Correct.
That was just a change in state law, also on your ballot. So some voters have seen it on their ballot and assumed maybe, well, that would change the Constitution. No, not here, but maybe it will next time.
Right, and this is a reason why ballot initiatives increasingly over the last decade or so are constitutional amendments rather than statutory, because the state legislature tends to overturn those more progressive ballot initiatives.
What do you see in the offings there? We know that some of the Jobs with Justice group, they were on this program a couple weeks ago, just before the House and Senate voted to strip those protections out. They've been poised to go ahead and start gathering petition signatures. It's right back to the campaign trail for them.
Yeah, and that statute passed with 58% of the vote, which is more votes than Josh Hawley got in Missouri. And so it will be interesting, I think, to see how elected officials come out for or against that initiative.
Right. Always great to talk to you, Anita Mannion. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We're back in a moment. Tornadoes are devastating wherever they touch down. As a matter of geographics and odds, we just don't often see them hammer large population centers like we did this week. We had to go back 66 years to find a deadlier, more fearsome twister to hit St. Louis. When we checked the record, we found 21 people in the city and county of St. Louis were killed when hundreds of buildings were crushed under the force of an EF5 tornado in February of 1959. It was bitterly cold then, too, further complicating recovery efforts. Just like this twister, Delmar Boulevard, that line of demarcation dividing wealth, class, and race in the city's checkered housing history, was hit hard then too. This storm scattered bricks and shattered beams, but it could not shake the foundation laid in courage. As New York Times reporter Taylor Tiamoyo Harris noted, this storm claimed the building just next to it, but spared the Shelley House, where one black family's stand for equal housing struck down the legal walls of segregation and changed the nation's history. History reminds us, it's not just wind that tears communities apart, but neglect and prejudice left unchallenged. After all, some walls were meant to fall. This storm won't define us, but how we respond to it, how we rebuild, will. That's all of our time this week. Until we come back again next week, we're off the record.